So we'll revive our motivation. We'll use Shakyamuni Buddhist mantra. Taya Taya Mudaya Mudaya Mahan Mudaya Soha Taya Taya Mudaya Mudaya Mahan Mudaya Soha Taya Taya Mudaya Mahan Mudaya Soha. Okay. So now we're going to look at the 5 very common faults and their 8 antidotes, particularly to developing single-pointed concentration, but it can apply generally to our path, so you can use it in whatever way. It was initially, under the heading of developing single-pointed concentration, but I think there's a lot to relate to within this. So the idea is that the first problem is laziness, and that needs the most antidotes. And if you can get on top of your laziness, everything else is going to come fairly easily. And when we say laziness, we don't mean worldly laziness, we mean spiritual laziness. So, we might be very productive members of society, we might be very busy, we might get all of our jobs done, we might be very reliable. We're not lazy by a worldly standard. But we might be lazy from a spiritual perspective, and all of us are, and so it's not meant as, like, you lazy people over there who are bad. It's us who have a habit of laziness. We are not lazy, we have laziness. Does that make sense? So when we say laziness, we mean basic, ordinary laziness, which is like putting stuff off. That's important. We say procrastination, putting things off. But there's also the laziness of attachment to lesser activities. So instead of doing a harder practice, a harder study, or a harder meditation, harder in terms of just newer or less in the flow, we're choosing something simpler out of avoidance. Not because that's a good idea, because we're in the flow with it, which is fine. It's got a instead of feeling to it. So if you only ever did shamatha on a mental object for the rest of your life, it could be a very excellent practice. But you doing that instead of meditating on wisdom or meditating on compassion, because those are more confronting or they're more problematic, if you're doing it instead of, that's the problem. If you're doing it to facilitate the process of, excellent. So as ever with everything in Buddhism, it's your reason why, and it's your deepest reason why. So when we set our motivation, it sometimes feels odd because we can think, doesn't it go without saying that everything I do is in order to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings? Or doesn't it go without saying that I am going to a Dharma class because of altruistic reasons? Why do I have to keep saying it again and again? That's the whole point of everything in my life. And it might be, but to wake it up on purpose makes it stronger. The other problem we might have is thinking, actually, I don't know that that's my motivation. That sounds like a nice motivation, but I don't know if it really is. Is it hypocritical to say so? Or is it not quite right or not quite how I would put it? And that's an interesting examination and really useful inner work to do. But you can have it live in the realm of aspiration. I would like that to be my motivation, even if it's not yet. So when we're looking at laziness, we really want to be looking at things like faith and aspiration. To overcome it, we need to really have faith that what we're putting ourselves through is going to lead to something beneficial. Faith based in experience and reasoning, logic. Conviction, absolutely. And so blind faith has some benefit. It can kind of get you motivated and inspired, but it can really lose power as soon as life is hard. You can think, like many people do, everything is God's plan. We don't talk about God in Buddhism, right? But people think, okay, everything's God's plan, and when there's little difficulties, putting life into that framework settles them down and thinks, oh, it's just part of God's plan that I lost my job, I'll just shift, okay. But then what if their child dies? Or what if something incredibly tragic happens? Then if they only have blind faith, they rage at God or stop believing in God. So blind faith is not usually enough to carry you through the worst moments. For some people it is, but when it is, sometimes it's got that brittleness or that tightness or that dissociativeness that says, I cannot think anything other than this is true, otherwise the whole world falls apart, or the whole house of cards of my belief system will just fall to pieces. So blind faith in any context, Buddhist or otherwise, is just like a stopgap, just a little whisper of something to get you motivated, but not something to rely on for a mature practitioner. Because usually at some point it will be challenged, and if it doesn't have logic reinforcing it, then you're in despair. So faith comes from a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of magic, a little bit of seeing very interesting stuff, but mostly from when I try the things that this path says to do, they work. Simple as that. And then you have faith based on, oh, it works when they say to do that, so it probably works when they say to do this. It's, you're making a correlation that is logic-based. And you're also having enough self-awareness and active inner guru that knows that pacing is going to be a huge part of all of this. So if the Buddha says patience can be developed through wisdom and loving kindness, you think there's some logic in that. The processes that they show in that section make sense, but I am not sure that I will be able to achieve that perfection of patience immediately because of my strong habituation towards anger. But it makes enough sense for me to try, and then you try enough and it starts to work, which gives you more faith that it works and more effort to try. It's all kind of mutually reinforcing. So if you think something like, they say that in Buddhism, one of the results of concentration is to be able to walk on water and to do transformations like, water into wine and burning bush stuff, and all the miracles you see in miscellaneous other religions from a Buddhist perspective are just a side effect or a result of having perfected concentration. So this magical feats is developed through concentration. Now, how do you have faith in that if you have no concentration? Yeah. Or if you've never met someone who is walking around on water, right? So you can kind of put that in the realm of maybe, there's some very famous stories about such things, maybe, but anyway, that's not the point of the path. That's just kind of a symptom or a side effect of when you develop your mind in this way. So then that makes you think, oh, maybe these historical figures were amazing meditators. Oh, cool. It goes across all religions. That's so cool. Oh, neat. Anyway, right now let's just try and sit still and be at peace with my own thoughts. So when you have faith, it's reinforced by so many different things, but it needs to be an active thing, not a passive thing. You can't just kind of hope for yourself to have faith, or just wait for faith to happen to you. You have to be actively kind of making everything you hear a personal conversation. Like you're talking to the Buddha in your head. You're like, okay, Buddha, you say if I have these preliminaries and this focal object, this way, this will happen. Does that make sense enough to try? It seems to. I understand a little about focus in the worldly sense. Okay, I'll try. Let's see what happens. No expectations, no pressure, just experiment. So you try to keep it in this happy, maybe, let's try, curious place that doesn't have pressure on you or pressure on it. Yeah, the path itself or yourself, the practitioner. No pressure, but happy, curious effort that thinks, yeah, maybe. And with enough sort of trial and error of the maybe, then, you start to build some sort of momentum and conviction. A lot of this in the beginning relies on logic, because it takes a while for there to be experience you can tie into. But it doesn't have to be magic transformational experiences like some huge cognitive shift. It can just be those moments in class where you think, well, that really makes sense. That would explain a lot about my life. All right, I gotta do things differently. You know, those moments, just thinking, are amazing. So what you have is enough faith to develop aspiration. And aspiration kind of lifts you and makes you unafflictedly excited to try. Yeah? So we're not trying to force effort or force joyous effort. We're letting a kind of mental momentum build that makes us really want to try and really want to do effort. And when you want to do effort, it's happy effort. And when you have enough happy effort, it becomes effortless. So that's how you get over laziness. Yeah, you don't sort of like bludgeon yourself into submission. Pliancy is the same pliancy we were talking about before, that word that means a flexibility of mind and a flexibility of body, together with some bliss. It's not the exact same pliancy as what comes with pure calm abiding, but it's a similar idea of ease. It's easier. And it is a strange word. We don't use it in English very often. So basically the idea is if it doesn't come easily, if the effort doesn't come easily and happily, go back a few steps. Yeah? Just go back a few steps and think, what is it I aspire to have and be? I want to be kinder. I want to be happier. I want to be wiser. I want to stop negative habits. Just basic stuff like that. Are those things worth aspiring to? Yes. Do I have tons of aspiration for them? Not as much as I'd like. That's weird. I value them. Why don't I have, what? So then you go back a step and think, maybe I don't have faith that it's possible. Okay, let's go back to that. Okay, do I have faith that I could be happier and kinder? Do I have faith that I could break my negative habits and develop wisdom? Okay, what can I start with that I've already touched? Maybe there was some relationship in your past that was just hard. Every time you met them, it was hard. Communication was just two heads smashing together. And for whatever collection of conditions, something healed between you, and you were able to put yourself in their shoes, and you were able to be patient and hear them out. You were able to reflect and see your own faults or your own problematic behaviors, and over time, something healed. And you think, if I had not applied effort, if I had not applied wisdom, that would have stayed that way forever. But I can have faith that change is possible because things are better between us than they used to be. And the reason they're better between us is from a great deal of effort from my side. Of course, they had to be open to it too. But somewhere in your life, even if it was just on the playground as children, you're fighting over a toy and then decided to share, that's worth celebrating. Yeah, it's my car, it's your car, it's my car, it's your car. I'm going to hit you with the car. Shall we share the car? Okay, friends. Even just those tiny moments in the past where you realized there was some interconnectedness, and in realizing that, there was joy and connection. Huge. And so you sort of sit with, well, that gives me some faith that change is possible. What else? What else? And you just kind of go through, sift through the memories in your life, sift through historical moments where people, for once, stopped being so selfish. For once, they started to collaborate and share. It's like, of course there's war, of course there's conflict, but let's look at those moments where actually people did something different. Those heroic moments where they saw the greater good. Huge. And you just kind of like remembering on purpose with a lot of intention until that faith is strong enough to move you into an aspiration. And that aspiration is strong enough to move you into effort. So and that effort then becomes easy. So when you're looking at your own laziness, really approach it from this different perspective and see what happens. Rather than saying, look at all the good things you can get from effort, come on! Or look at how bad you are for not doing that, smash, smash. Like, don't be so simplistic. Really be practical about what will actually give you some lift. Does that make sense? Do you have questions about that laziness? Yeah.
So the ultimate goal of the entire learning we're doing is that I will be happier and calmer?
That's more of a side effect. Yeah. The ultimate goal is enlightenment, or Buddhahood, which means you are free from negative states of mind, which means you don't do negative, harmful behaviors. It means you're free from ignorance, so you can see reality clearly. If you can see reality clearly, you can help people in an unmistaken way, rather than like an educated guess, which is what we do now. We're sort of helpful and then sometimes make things worse. So the goal is enlightenment, Buddhahood, but along the way, as you become wiser and kinder, that means that you're happier and more peaceful. And when you're happier and more peaceful, it's easier to be kinder and wiser. So there's this kind of like mutual benefit all the way along the path until you perfect your mind. But way before your mind is perfected, you are a lot happier and a lot more kind. So I guess then the question becomes, are those side effects that are appealing, is the goal of enlightenment something that intrigues you? And those are just personal questions for each of us. But even just concentration itself, if you want to do something beneficial for society, but you're not sure if enlightenment is possible, concentration will help. Even if you don't believe in future lives, even if you don't believe in like a fundamental transformation of a human being, or if suffering actually can be overcome, you already have some concentration and have seen that it's useful. So then you can make the educated guess that more concentration would bring more power and impact to anything you direct your attention towards. So whether it's faith towards the whole spiritual path, or just faith about concentration as a tool, either one will work in this kind of schema. Does that answer your question?
Do I have another one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
We're talking a lot this morning, not only this morning, about I, me, mine, etc., etc. If you put all this in a bag and put it aside, and we look at self-detachment, would that help? Would that be a way to get progress?
The relationship with the self is definitely fundamental. That way of understanding that the way we think we exist is not how it actually exists will lead to that correct kind of detachment that's not disengaged or ignoring or like pushing aside the reality of your experience, but is understanding the reasons for your experience and the way what you feel and see and decide are incredibly interconnected. So that what you say and do has an immediate impact on others and radiates all throughout the world, and what other people do has an impact on you and radiates all through your body and mind, and that we're just completely interconnected. So thinking self, me, and mine in this kind of concrete way is exaggerated and false and just not the way things are at all. So knowing that, you can have a kind of detachment, which 100% helps on the path for sure. But how you get there is delicate, because you don't want the detachment to be a neglect, because you're still an individual who needs to be taken care of and is worthy of love and compassion. It's just you as an individual are not so independent as you feel, or so disconnected from others as it seems. So you're sort of putting aside the false self so that the reality of how the self exists can kind of relax back into the connection that is already there. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the self-conversation is a huge one. I think what can happen with both Buddhism and psychology and any form of like inner work is that you're getting better at being introspective and noticing what's going on for you, which is good, but then it can go too far and become kind of like self-obsessed, self-conscious, and you can actually become a little bit neurotic or a little bit too worried or too controlling of your own inner experience.
Perfectionist.
Yeah, like a perfectionist, exactly. And then there's kind of a tightness or a pride or a defensiveness or just kind of a you don't like what you see so you hope no one else has noticed kind of like fear. And what you want that inner work to do is to immediately connect outward. And you think, wow, look at all of the things going on for me that affect the way I use my body, speech, and mind. If that's true for me, it must be true for others. The details are just different. So you immediately have this relating, which stops one of the main stresses in our everyday life, which is, why are people like that? Why don't they stop? Whatever it is, right? You immediately think, I know why they do that. I know why they don't stop. Because I know me, you know? And I'm full of hypocrisy and inconsistencies and lack of logic. So too humanity. Hello, friends. You know, and you sort of feel, yeah, there's a humorous connected feeling with your inner work. So if your inner work leads to kind of just a pain of what you found, it's gone the wrong direction. It should be an amazement of all of the tiny things that go into one moment, and then you go, oh, and everyone else too. Okay, let's figure this out. Team, you know? Rather than let's just sort out this one individual, your process of coming to health becomes a process of adding health to humanity. And so you're not taking yourself in such a heavy way on the path. It's just like you're the main example of humanity because you're the one where your mind is with, you know, that's where your mind is, so that's where the work has to be done. But it's not like obsessed. So it's that difference between self-aware and self-conscious. A lot of that depends on understanding there's a difference between how your mind exists kind of in its natural state and then the things that are additional, adventitious, extra, which is ignorance, anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, that they arise here but they are not you. So then if you're looking inward and you find those things, you are not to blame. You just have responsibility. Or you look inward and you see that you're patient and that you're kind and that you're wise, you don't praise yourself for those things. You think, that was learned. I had support for that. Experiences reinforced that. Excellent, may I share it? But, you know, your good news doesn't trigger pride, and your bad news doesn't trigger depression, because you're not so identified with the collection of things that have accumulated here. You just try and work with what's here. You know, like when you move to a new place and you try and start a garden, you have to just, here's the soil I have, that's going to mandate the kind of garden I have. And maybe I can add some things to make the soil richer, but this is what I'm working with. So what will grow here? You know, it just becomes more strategic, less kind of personal. So when you get over laziness, when we get over laziness, then we're just working on forgetfulness, which is just forgetting what we're meditating on or forgetting what we're practicing. And that's just as easy as remembering, which is what mindfulness means in this context. So mindfulness with the agenda of, am I staying in alignment with my ethics? Am I staying in alignment with what I've set out to do? So not forgetting the meditation object, but also not forgetting your reasons why. And then you have laziness and excitement, which kind of go back and forth and take turns and have a dance in your mind of basically too excited, too peppy, too stimulated, too kind of caffeinated, or too lethargic and sleepy and heavy and dull. And those two distractions are cut with introspection. So you look inward and you just notice them. And because you know those two things are problematic to your concentration, sometimes that is enough to stop them. You don't even need to say more. You just go, oh, a bit excited. Anyway. Yeah, or, oh, a bit heavy, a bit laxity. Okay, anyway. And just noticing that there's like a dip or a racing off, you know, kind of a flying off where it's sinking down, just noticing that is enough to kind of pull you back into balance. If it's not, then you add extra thoughts. But if you've already decided those are not what I want in my meditation, usually noticing them is enough to bring you back. But when it's not, or when it's new, too heavy, what do you do? What do you say to yourself to bring yourself out of heaviness? What kind of thoughts?
Death is coming.
Can. Can in the sense of yes. Can in the sense of also that can help. But that's better for when you're too high. You want to bring yourself low. When you're too low, you want to bring yourself higher. So how do you bring yourself?
Human birth.
Yes, perfect human rebirth.
Yes.
Yes, you can. Perfect human rebirth, classic, right? But you have to have decided that that's true. You know, you think, yeah, I'm human, but am I a perfect human rebirth? You know, but then, you know, are you independent enough to have gotten yourself to class? You are. Are you independent enough to process the content of class? You are. Perfect human rebirth. Yeah, if for some reason, as chaotic as this area can be, if we weren't allowed to practice whatever we wanted, it wouldn't be a perfect human rebirth. But we are, even though there's all sorts of disharmony and, you know, dissonance about different religions, still we can do what we want. Yeah, we're independent enough, right? Free enough. We could say today Buddhism, tomorrow Hinduism, then after that, you know, some Islam, then after that some Judaism, then after that some New Age woo-woo. I could do what I like. We can do what we like, right? Free. Perfect human rebirth. This body, could it be healthier? Yes. This mind, could it be healthier? Yes. But it's healthy enough to get here. Yeah? Both of them are healthy enough to get here and to be able to process things. Which does not seem like a big deal, only it is. It's huge. Not just because we have that independence, but because we have any kind of interest. Yeah, we have interest in a spiritual path, which is actually a huge deal. Lots of people have a healthy body and a healthy mind enough, but no interest whatsoever. Or there's people with tons of interest, no access. So we have access to teachings that help with the developmental process. We have access. Those teachings exist. So all of that stuff, we just take it for granted because we really were reborn in a lucky situation. Fortunate situation. The conditions came together. We are in a fortunate place, but it can really uplift the mind thinking, yeah, actually, I'm in a good state. And then you get a little bit of that, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? But lifting. So if remembering perfect human rebirth actually triggers some old stuff, maybe if you were brought up in a Judeo-Christian background that was heavy, remembering a perfect human rebirth can actually make you feel ashamed, like you're not living up to it.
Yeah.
You know, look at, I have all this abundance, I have all of this intelligence, I have all this health, I have all this support, and I just don't do anything useful, I'm crap. You know, like, that can happen. So the intention of the perfect human rebirth topic is to lift you up, but if that doesn't work because of how you were brought up, use something else. Yeah, like Buddha nature. Yeah, like that this mind, no matter how messy it gets, no matter how difficult the habits, those will never enter into the very essence of the mind. They are always removable. This mind, no matter how anxious or depressed or angry or confused, no matter what happens to this mind, I can't ruin it. I can't ruin its potential for transformation. It will always have the potential for transformation. Always. It can't be ruined. So that's happy thought. Yeah? So whatever is going to give you the happy enough thought to kind of like lift you out of the fog, do that. Then excitement is the bringing down. So yes, remember, death is coming. But if other things kind of bring you down, but not too far down, you know, just kind of like bring you out of excitement, it sometimes is as simple as, what are my priorities? You know, like, okay, the thought that I'm spinning off with is an interesting and intriguing thought. However, the work that I'm doing is so powerful and significant for my lifetime's spiritual path. So I'm not pretending that what I'm thinking about isn't interesting. It might be interesting, but it's not as important. So just that shift of priorities can bring you back. Then we have non-application, which is going to be a while, but basically you just have some subtle obstacles in your meditation. You know how to apply an antidote, but you don't. So it's non-application. You're not applying an antidote when you know how to and you know it's time. So the antidote is just apply it. Yeah, application of the antidote. And then what happens is you're so good at that and you're so used to that that you overdo it. So you're applying antidotes and you're like, am I too tight or too loose? You know, and you're just adjusting. But you actually don't need to. You've actually become a good meditator at this point. Rest in equanimity. So this is not immeasurable equanimity, this is the antidote of equanimity. So same word, different meaning, but it means rest in balance, just balanced equanimity, not immeasurable equanimity. Measurable equanimity, may all sentient beings be free from hatred, attachment, and indifference. Wonderful, amazing, totally separate use of the word. This word means resting in balance, not too tight, not too loose, with your antidotes themselves. You don't need to apply them if there's no need for them. Rest in equanimity. So that'll be a nice fault to have, that one. Yeah, I'm looking forward to having that fault of overdoing the antidotes, right? But I think just even understanding that this schema exists, again, is showing us that none of our problems are unique. Nothing about us is faulty or primordially unable to be transformed. These are all timeless human characteristics. These are issues all of us have always had. Nothing to have shame about. We're all in it together. Sometimes the spiritual path has all of this pressure of performance when no one is watching. You know, you go to your own cushion, you sit down, you meditate for 5 minutes, and you think, what if my friends knew I only meditated 5 minutes? I should do 10 minutes. No one is watching. No one cares, right? The Buddhas are rooting you on, you know, like a team of cheerleaders. They're like, yay, 5 minutes, well done, you know? But there's no need to think about your spiritual path in terms of competitiveness with anyone else you're practicing with, or assumptions about yourself and your own progress just because intellectually you understand. That there always will be a huge gap between what you understand and what you can actually do. That's totally normal. And just imagine that all of your knowledge is like the top of a funnel, and it drips down drip by drip by drip into your actual experience, and it gradually gets in there. But there's way more up here than there is coming down, and that's normal. So if you can keep that lightness, it takes the pressure off, and if there's no pressure, then there's not resistance, there's not grief, there's not expectations, all that stuff that makes it harder to sit down and just try. So any questions about your meditation before we call it a day?
So can you give us some practical advice how to do it? I'm sure everybody always asks this question, you know, when we study about meditation. So how my personal practice, I'm not asking about my personal practice, but what should I do?
Well, I think it depends so much on the individual, but the first thing you can say to yourself is, I don't have to. It sounds radical, but it takes the pressure off. Right? Like, no one is telling me to practice. I don't have to practice. I could live the rest of my life not practicing or opening another Dharma book or ever doing another meditation. I am good enough. I am worthy. I'm of benefit to society, my family, and all sentient beings. I am enough. I don't have to do anything.
That's radical.
It is.
It's extremely radical.
And it frees up space that makes you go, but I want to. But I wanted to do the spiritual path. But I wanted to meditate. And then you want to. But there's so much about how we were brought up, any number of ways, whether Jewish or Christian or just society, Western culture, that has this heaviness of like should. And if you can just kick off the should, all this space is opened up. And then you have this, but I want to.
But there's
right?
something about Buddhism that always tells you, you could be better.
It's not better so much as happier or fuller or richer or more connected. You know, we can frame it in terms of better because those words come easily, but you are enough even if you never changed. Even if you got worse, you're enough. You're fine. You just somehow, daily practice, you have to think of it in some sort of way of you will be loved and are loved by the divine energy of the universe regardless of what you do. If you were a serial killer, you would still be worthy of love. If you were a pedophile, you'd still be worthy of love. If you're a dung beetle, you're still worthy of love. So of course you're worthy of love. You're a nice person, right? Of course, right? But this is all dependent arising. all of these causes and conditions to be able to practice, to want to practice, some of them are in your control and some of them aren't. So you're just kind of having that like happy humility that does the best you can in any given moment, even though every moment is different. And daily practice is huge and important. Continuity is huge and important. But the continuity doesn't have to have any kind of hardship associated with it. It's kind of coming back to your heart. So in the morning, and I mean, you guys know me, I have terrible mornings. I feel horrible in the morning. What I say when I wake up is my practice. While I'm still in bed, I repeat the words of bodhicitta in my head again and again and again as I bleary-eyed stagger out of bed, bleary-eyed stagger to the sink, brush my teeth, do the things that my body does not want to do because I feel like crap, because my mind is heavy and not sharp and clear. And I just repeat simple words of bodhicitta in my head doing ordinary things, and I tell myself, I don't even have to do my practice. I can just think about bodhicitta in the morning. I don't even have to. And saying that, then I want to, and then I do. And if I don't, the world will not end. I will not be struck down by Zeus's lightning bolt, you know? But it's somehow just taking the pressure right off of who you were before you met the path was enough, who you are after you've met the path is enough. You're enough, you're fine. You're fine. And just even giving yourself permission not to do anything reminds you of how much you love it and want to. But you've like taken that stinger of expectations and societal pressure away. Yeah, and then at the end of the day, you're walking around, you know, you take your shower or whatever you do, you know, changing into comfy clothes, having whatever cup of tea. You're thinking words of dedication, just doing ordinary things of, today, yeah, I was in alignment with my path a few times. Oh, I went out of my path a few times. Oh, a lot of the day was distracted. Yep, that is important self-awareness. I'm thinking about the day and not losing the lessons of the day. Walking the dog, cleaning the dishes, doing whatever your like wind down routine is, while saying, I don't have to sit down and purify. I don't have to. I can just recognize my life as it is, or not. I could watch 10 seasons of Netflix and burn my eyes out. Yeah, I could eat a whole tub of ice cream. I can. I'm allowed. I'm a grown-up. And then you're like, but I don't want to. I want to do my practice, right? It's like this kind of psychology that just frees the space back up. So you think, I'm not even going to do 10 minutes, I'm going to do 2 minutes, and then you do 2 minutes and go, but I want to do 10 minutes, you know? Like this. I know, it sounds silly, but it helps. You just somehow like take the rocks off your shoulders and say, this is to give me joy and connection, you know, wisdom. This is not to like force me into a box of perfection. It's to lift me into my potential. So, you know, that should be fun. And when there's hardships, they're seen in a totally different light. They're seen as, oh, right, yeah, that was one of the things I knew was going to happen. Right, okay, here we go. Bring it on. So that's the short answer. Okay, well, I won't see you guys in person for a while, but I'm around and I'm emailable, so we'll dedicate all of this whole module and all of our time together. May this go towards awakening our fullest potential in order to benefit all sentient beings. Janchu Sancho Rinpoche Ma Ke Panam Ke Yuchi Ke Panyam Pa Me Pai Gone Gondu Panwa Sho Toni Dawa Rinpoche Ma Ke Panam Ke Yuchi Ke Panyam Pa Me Pai Gone Gondu Panwa Sho. May all of our teachers always show the aspect of long and healthy lives. May we connect with them again and again, all the way until the great enlightenment is achieved. Tודה רבה.
תודה רבה.